Powered by GoGoat Sports and in partnership with TSN, this is Season 3. It is Episode 35 of the Dregs Hockey Podcast. And it is presented, as always, by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. Ray is joining us. Where are you? You in Carolina?
I just got back to Raleigh. After Game 4 in New York last night.
What a push by the Rangers, man. Let's see if that trend of home road continues for the Carolina Hurricanes. It better not, or they're in trouble. Right?
Man, because if that's the case, the margin is so slim. You lose one at home here. They haven't won a game on the road. And I thought last night in Game 4 for the first time, Dregs, Carolina looked rattled for the first time.
That way. Yeah.
And so they've got to turn the bus around here, and it's a huge Game 5 for both teams.
All right, we've got a good look at episode 35 for Jessica Campbell, who's an assistant coach with Team Germany. History making, by the way, first female coach at the IIHF Men's World Hockey Championship. She's on the bench with Team Germany, decorated national player in Canada, a very good college player. So she is going to stop by and join us in episode 35 to not only talk about the Worlds, but maybe her coaching philosophies and what's next. I mean, at some point, there's going to be a woman on a bench in the National Hockey League, and maybe it'll be Jessica Campbell. So looking forward to that. Tough way to start the podcast. We don't normally do this, but we're not ignorant to world events, right? And I first want to invite anybody listening or watching, if you haven't seen Steve Kerr and his emotional statement that he made, he's the coach of Golden State Warriors, talking about the shooting that now has killed at least 21 people, mostly children, at a Texas elementary school. I invite you to log on to social media. You'll find it anywhere. It was a media availability. Kerr didn't take questions. He just issued a very powerful statement. And if you don't know, we know the history of the Kerr family. His father was murdered, right? So he comes by the emotion honestly. But when you wake up in the morning and you see something like that, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously you're overwhelmed with emotion because we have children and we think of what we would feel like as a parent, the helplessness. Why couldn't we done something to protect these innocent children from a situation like that? And I speak for myself, I'm flooded for anger. How many times do we need to see these things, Ray? How many times in the country of the United States of America before the policymakers and the decision makers take it seriously and at least try and stop it from happening?
Why, I don't know how many is the answer. The answer is infinite because we're at a point in time where there are more mass shootings than days in the year in the United States. We're 10 days away or 10 days past the shooting at the supermarket in Buffalo. And now we have this horrible event at the school in Texas. Yeah. I just do not understand how anybody, regardless of political association, can say that trying to pass a legislation for a background check is so much an obstruction to the Second Amendment that they can't see it. I don't think there's a soullessness to this. It doesn't take very much for any of these senators, if they really want to, just put their own child in that spot, put their own child's face in that spot. How could they possibly think what they are doing, which is nothing except taking money from the gun lobby? How can they think that doing nothing is the right answer? There is nothing worth protecting if the result is this. I feel so sad, and I see these pictures and I see these parents waiting for news on their children. And of course you don't know them. Oh my gosh, it has to stop. But how does it stop if the people that hold the law in their hand won't make it stop? That's where the anger needs to be directed.
Well, we're not going to be a very good distraction, but we'll try our best here in episode 35, and hopefully entertain as we got dive deeper into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Headlines presented by our friends at Boston Pizza. And Boston Pizza's got meals for everyone. Big deals: pizza, pasta, wings, salad. Pick it up or get it delivered to your door. Either way, BP is going to make sure all your people are happy tonight. So why don't we start with Colorado St. Louis? And it's hard to do too deep of a dive there because we're recording this on Wednesday and the series continues. The St. Louis Blues on the brink, but it feels like we do need to address the Nazem Kadri nonsense and his hat trick response. And,
Right.
Craig Berube, the head coach of the St. Louis Blues, finally addressed it. There's been so much that has been made, and Nazem Kadri has responded to the ridiculousness, the underbelly of social media and Twitter coming at him with racial threats and death threats and all of that. And I for one, Ray, I thought that Kadri handled it well. He's a big boy. He's a professional athlete. Does he have feelings and emotions? Of course he does. But I believe that the reason that he speaks out, period, is simply because he's trying to do better, try and change the world a little bit, and maybe deflect it away from his family, who is probably paying more of a price, as his wife tweeted the texts and the tweets and everything directed at him. But beyond that, what do you make of how he then found a way to channel it all, focus, and then come up large against the St. Louis Blues in the last game? I mean, talk about Kadri clearly being in the kitchen of the St. Louis Blues.
Well, honestly, when I look over Nazem Kadri's career over the last 6 or 7 years, the only thing I don't like about it is his lack of discipline in those moments when he has been suspended in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Never have I thought that this is a guy that doesn't want to win, that will do what he needs to do to win.
Mm-hmm.
And so he needs more fuel, like a third foot. Like, he doesn't need it. That fuel's always there for him. Well, when this fuel showed up in this ridiculousness, yes, he's handled it well. He clearly shouldn't have to handle it. Like,
No.
what's wrong with people? Like, seriously. Yeah. It just, again, like that just, we talked about the Texas stuff a moment ago, and that makes me sad and angry. This just pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does he have to deal with this for? Why do these idiots have a platform that he even has to deal with? What's wrong with these people? But Nazem goes into the game. He's got a building that hates him, or hates him because he ran into the goalie, I think is really, quite honestly, what it's about. And then he's like, yeah, well, there's one. Oh, I got two. And would you look at that? There's three. I can't even imagine the satisfaction of the third one to go in.
Yeah.
And so he's been outstanding all year for Colorado. Like, not just pretty good, but when McKinnon was out, when McKinnon early in the year wasn't scoring, Kadri's had just a brilliant year. He is a competitive guy.
Ooh. Well, man, he's found such a big way to be impactful in that series. And to be fair, there was that altercation with David Perron and all of that. I were you a bit surprised that it was only a fine of $5,000? I mean, that was a pretty nasty check. I don't know.
You know what bugged me more? When he whiffed on the elbow. Like, Perron tried to elbow him right in the head. Yeah. And this is a guy with terrible concussion history.
Yeah.
Like, that was a pretty cheap play by Perron. The $5,000, not enough.
No.
In my mind.
No. All right, Game 4, Flames Oilers. Just a wild hockey game. It started bizarre and it pretty much ended in a similar fashion, right? It starts with Jacob Markstrom just whiffing on the puck, and there's Nugent Hopkins with the empty net to open the scoring. The Oilers roll out to the 3-0 lead, and then you fast forward, and there's the comeback by the Calgary Flames. And then I'll give Mike Smith credit post game. Now it's easier to dive on the sword when you've won the hockey game and joke about it after the fact, but he openly admitted that he just didn't see the puck. And I think that was abundantly obvious when you saw Rasmus Andersson fire it in from 130 plus feet. But talk about what could have been an absolute series changer, right? If Calgary finds a way to feed off the momentum of that tying goal, Andersson from way out there, I mean, could be series changing. I mean, that's how dramatic that was.
Stunning to watch. As the puck hits the back of the net. So I'm in the States. I'm watching on ESPN, and Brian Boucher's doing the game. He's the analyst. And from a goalie perspective, he said, I can guarantee you that puck got up over the height of the boards and he lost it in the crowd.
Yeah.
Because when else would a puck be coming with any speed above the boards? Never.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at the video, like two Oilers kind of skate through the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's sitting in the net on his knees, can't see a thing. He must have just been in total panic. And then to hear it hit the net would have made you want to throw up in your mask.
His reaction was unbelievable. Like he was obviously pissed off, and he didn't see the puck, but it looked like he was looking for somebody to blame. Like he's like kind of shaking waving his arms and kind of barking. And I think it was just a culmination of emotions that bubbled to the surface when he realized the puck was in the net.
But the other part to that is once that thing goes in, and of course, then it's, who knows what's going to happen. But there's been a growth since the coaching change in the Oilers in the way that they can play. Like they went through a long stretch of the season where they didn't score a lot. They just checked really well, and they got good goaltending. They had that 15-game stretch or whatever it was that cost Dave Tippett his job. But they got off to a great start, and now here they are 1 win away from the conference final. Cody Cece's had a terrific year for them.
Yeah.
Brought in as a free agent. Evander Kane has been like lights out money for them since they brought him in as a free agent. Zach Hyman has been terrific for them all year. So they jumble the roster around. They make some free agent signings, but it still comes back to your 40-year-old goalie. Mm-hmm. And he had to, I was thinking, you give up that goal, how do you move past it? In your head,
tough.
For me as a player, I could at least run into somebody. I could cross-check somebody. You could get a little anger out. All you can do is stop the next shot.
Yeah.
And you have to. And so I was really quite impressed actually after watching that and going, what the hell just happened? What is that?
Speaking of that series, Steve Dryden, the evil quizmaster at TSN, has been busy this week. He made the case on tsn.ca, for those of you who haven't seen it, you've got to read it, that Connor McDavid is the best player ever, the most evolved from a speed perspective to a skill perspective. Not the greatest, so let's not confuse. He's not saying that Connor McDavid is greater than Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr, go down the list. Jean Beliveau, go down the list. Doesn't matter. But he is saying that he is the best and most refined. Did you get a chance to read it?
Oh, yeah.
And if you did, do you agree?
I do.
Yeah.
The only thing McDavid doesn't have top of class is shot. Right? You can pick out a bunch of people that can shoot the puck better.
Yeah.
Any other skill, I'll take McDavid. Who's better? Who can do what he can do at the speed he can do? The answer is nobody. There's been nobody in the history of the game that can do what Connor McDavid does at the speed that he does it. Look, I've been around the NHL now since 1984. The closest guy, speed and power and all that, and skill was Pavel Bure that I can recall. Not close.
Really?
Not this. Like, could you imagine what a defenseman sees when McDavid picks up the puck in his own end and now's got room between him and you, the defender? You can't back up fast enough. You could get in the parking lot and he'll still get around you. I think he's the most agile, the fastest, the best balance, agility, like, man, all of it. Yes, I'm in that camp.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Calgary tried the swarm defense type of approach, right, in Game 4, where they just surround him with bodies to take away the space, and there was some back check and gap closing and all of that, but he still ends up with 2 points, and Leon Draisaitl has 3, and there's Evander Kane on that line, and he has another multi-goal game in the postseason, so it hasn't worked out that well for the Calgary Flames. I still feel like Calgary's got fight, though, right?
Oh, I do. I do too.
Series is over. Yeah,
that's not over yet. No.
Well, one series it is over, the Florida series, with Tampa Bay sweeping the Florida Panthers. And, I think we knew coming into the playoffs that the Lightning are a machine, just how they approach. You could be somewhat skeptical as to whether or not they were going to get by Toronto initially based on the talent level of the Leafs. Well, they did that in a 7-game series. Now they dispatched Florida in 4. And was this just that deadly cocktail, Ray, of a collection of players who have the experience, the high-end skill, and the will to do what you have to do to win at all costs, versus a team that scored a bazillion goals in the regular season, won the President's Trophy, but just couldn't get it going, couldn't find that stride, and just lost full run support? So is it inexperience on one side versus experience on the other, or is that too simple?
Well, I think it's too simple to put it into that one point, because there was one other guy that made a little bit of a difference, and that's the best goalie in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Andre Vasilevsky, he erases all 49 saves in the closer. How about that stupid stat? 6 shutouts in the last 7 clinching games. Like, are you kidding me? Like, how's that even possible for him? But when I look at Florida, I think back to Tampa of 3 years ago. President's Trophy winner, punted by Columbus in 4 straight games, had to remake their team a little bit. And they learned that what they thought was enough wasn't. I think that's where Florida is now. They got a very good team. They've got a lot of good players. What they found out is what they think they're working hard enough, it's not. They need to be more committed to play the game the way a playoff game has to go. That one game, I forget what game it was, game 2, I think. They were hauling players off the ice left and right for Tampa. Another block shot. Yeah. And they just, nothing was not important enough for them to lay it on the line. So I think Florida can learn that. They didn't learn it in this series because you can't learn it fast enough. Their personnel has to change. Right? Like a player like Anthony Duclair had a terrific year, and then he ended up being a healthy scratch. So that takes away part of your regular season success. Duclair's got another gear. They missed Mason Marchment in this series. Yeah. That size and strength, and he had a very, very good year too. But Tampa did it without Braden Point. They didn't even play in this series. So just think of this, Dregs. Tampa's given up 27 goals in 11 games. 24 of them were against Toronto. They gave up 3 goals against Florida. They averaged 4 goals a game. They haven't given up a third period goal in 6 straight games.
That's how you win this time of year, right?
100%. And you know what, Dregs? Last thing on this is that, there's that old story about the Oilers when they lost to the Islanders, and they thought the Islanders were going to be partying it up in the locker room. And in the old Coliseum, you had to walk by the Islander room. They walked by and they saw a bunch of guys sitting on the floor with ice bags and a couple of beers. They were going to go party later, but they're like, these guys are beat to a pulp. We thought we had enough, the Oilers. And then the next year they won the first of 4 cups. Like, you got to learn it. You got to see it. And Tampa is now, who's picking against Tampa now? I'm not.
Nope. Headlines brought to you by our pals at Boston Pizza. A good collection of information there today. And you wonder about episode 36 of Rain Dregs and the fact that we'll probably have some coaching news to share with everything that's going on in the coaching carousel. So look forward to that. Our interviews on Rain Dregs are brought to you by our pals at Canadian Club Whiskey, who are asking, are you over beer? Why not try refreshing CC Ginger Ale next time you're having a drink or watching the game? And Ray, we've tried the CC and Ginger Ale mixed and ready in a can, and we encourage everyone, at least in Canada, give it a crack because it's available now in many of the provinces across the country. You and I have had the chance to sample one or 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah.
It takes all the challenges out of it, right? And during the playoffs, so we've had this conversation on Rain Dregs before where, look, I'm old school. I like to mix my own CC and ginger. I do. But when you get home at like midnight Eastern and you just need a bit of a phlegm cutter, like a lead blanket, like just something.
I've never heard it called a phlegm cutter.
Just something to take the edge off. I've been
You're
talking endlessly.
It's unbelievable.
And look, the CC and ginger in a can. I'm not clanking the ice and doing all that stuff. Holly's sleeping, whatever. So
that's it right there.
Pop the top and away you go. Does not get better than that. Ray Ferraro, we've had some really good guests on the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast over the last few years, but I got to say this is one of my favorites, mostly because Jessica Campbell, who is our guest, she's an assistant coach with Team Germany at the Men's World Hockey Championship, comes to us from Finland, but she is from small town Saskatchewan, not that far from me. So automatically that ranks her top 3 on the Rain Dregs podcast list.
So did you know each other, Jessica, before at all? Just no, small town?
My dad goes, wait, he's a Langeberg guy, right? Or wherever. And he goes, he's right from a neck of our woods. I'm like, you know how many times I've heard that in the hockey world, how close I live to all of these cool people? We just never end up at home in Saskatchewan.
No, Dregs is moving back. Dregs has got its summer place, so never too far from roots, which is pretty awesome.
So, Jess, you're the first female coach in the history of the IIHF Men's World Hockey Championship. As I mentioned, assisting Team Germany there. The experience is far from over for Germany, but how's it been for you so far?
Yeah, it's been incredible. Obviously, coming in, I've been with the team 2 weeks prior in training camp before we even arrived in Finland. So really got to jump in full time and a taste of being out in the DL, which pace and familiarity there of players and staff, and it's been a really good transition. I think the staff, the guys especially, they're just first class. The federation, unbelievable, but it's been fast paced, a lot of just learning and going and conversation, decisions to make sure the team's having success. But I've had a really good experience so far, and I'm really looking for the next couple days here to push with the team and to see. I think we do have something special with our group.
Before we get into your entry into the coaching world and with Germany, the tournament itself, it's, I've covered it many times. I played 3 times. It's crazy busy, isn't it? Like, does it feel at all overwhelming?
You know what? I think because we're just operating on this level, as you know, always, you don't really get to come down. And so you sleep and then you wake up and you're back up here again. But it's funny. I say it every day. What day is it? Like, I don't even know days of the week. I called my 2-year-old niece and wished her happy birthday. My sister said, "You're a day late." I'm like, I don't know what time zone I'm in. But that's just, it's awesome because we're, video onto the next opponent, next game, regroup, kind of Groundhog Day. You just keep going with the pace of it all.
When you were playing, like, are you thinking one day I want to coach? Is that always kind of been your path, whether it was expressed or not?
Yeah, I don't think I expressed it. I definitely did not think it when I was attending an Ivy League university and getting my
Mm,
education, thinking this is where I wanted to get to, transitioning out of playing. But one thing I knew when I was playing, and probably the later last 5 years, I was running camps of my own, kind of giving back to my community back home in Saskatchewan, more skating camp specific. And I knew that was my strength as a player. I loved understanding and studying it and almost dissecting it further than kind of maybe a player would really typically think about their game. And so I was running camps and development, and that was part of kind of my off season, job in ways. But as soon as I finished playing, I just naturally kind of transitioned into a year, and I worked with a really great skating coach who is a mentor and former and friend and employer of mine. But David Roy, pioneer in the power skating
mm.
world, kind of took me under his wing and said, I want you to run with this and go after it. And it's, it makes you tick and you get excited. And so I just jumped right into the coaching world and the space for skating and skill development, and kind of led to this journey. But I definitely didn't anticipate kind of the trajectory and the scale of how quickly things would go. But I had a goal at no matter what I did post playing career, that I wanted to excel at the next route and the next goal, and working in this field, obviously be at the highest level. So I'm grateful to be here for sure.
What's the best part of coaching for you?
I think it's obviously like teaching the impact you experience it on the playing side, but when you're in the role as a coach, you realize that everything you say and the words, your actions, your communication, it has impact, and it can be a game changer, and on a singular level or on a collective team level. And so I love the fact that every day I have an opportunity to make a difference in a player's game and a team's game. And you don't take those opportunities lightly. But I think as a coach and maybe as a player, you don't always recognize that value. But when you look back on the coaches that shaped you, good and bad, you really realize the value of those coaches that have those touches on you and shape you into the person and the player. So I'm grateful to be on the other side of it now, knowing what that felt like as a player, but every day approaching my work and my ability to better players in that same way.
My wife Cami works with the Vancouver Canucks, and what I've learned from her is a leadership style that and a perspective that women can bring to a problem solve that men can't get to, and so or don't get to, can't get to. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
She seems to solve it way differently than I might even attempt to. So, do you find you have a unique approach or a unique vision, maybe to help a player to see a spot that you can help in that maybe is different than anything they've had the opportunity to come across?
Absolutely. I think you just hit it on the head. The one thing that I know, and I spoke about this a few days ago, is I never anticipated as a coach, which side of the game, the women's game or the men's game, but I wanted to be at the highest level and work with professionals. And so what I found interesting and what led me now being more on the men's side of the game is that niche space that you just spoke about. I think the communication, when I'm running my business or my skating and skill development for players, I have a very consistent style of how I deliver my development to players, in terms of starting with the game, explaining the why behind what we're doing. This is the situation. Here's the video. This is how it applies, and then breaking it down and dissecting it into small parts and communicating through that process. And it seems like there's always just a buy-in. Whether you have to know what you're doing, you have to be able to demonstrate, and you have to be able to explain the why and how it adds value to their game, right? And so for me, I learned that as a player, but maybe perhaps as a female we're more I don't know if it's sensitive, or I just keep hearing that we're better communicators. So I'm just going to go
Mm.
with that. But I do think that I personally know that I take a lot of pride in making sure my messaging is clear, direct, and meaningful, so that, it's, as a player, you need to understand what's going on and how this helps you or the team. And right away, there's, usually that immediate buy-in. And if not, then you continue to build that relationship. But that starts with good communication from the start.
Everybody will say in almost every field, experience is a teacher, good and bad. What have you learned now that's become part of your style, perhaps, that you started teaching a portion of a skill a certain way 2 years ago, and now you're like, oh, gee, I don't do it that way anymore? Is there something you can think of that would
Yeah,
have flipped through your experience?
for sure. The last, like, how I entered into the skating space, like, I would have said I was a power skating coach. Like, I was a great skater in straight lines. That was my game. And back, even back in 10 years ago, the game was even different 10 years ago in terms of how it was played north south. And now I've had to, and I challenge myself every day, and I look up to a lot of really good skills coaches that taught me this, and other coaches, but never stop being a student of the game. Like, as a coach, constantly study why are the best teams having success, why are the best players, study their game, study their tendencies, what they're doing, and then figure out how to dissect it and break it down. But one thing I've learned is what I was teaching 3 years ago maybe hasn't shifted in terms of what needs to still be taught, but there's other layers of the game.
Hmm.
That skating is a skill. So when you're skating now, it's a puck possession game. You have to be teaching acceleration beyond the next three steps, what's happening, linear, lateral directions, movement with the puck, change of direction. And so maybe perhaps things that we weren't really focusing on even 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, now is like the key essentials to being an impact player in the game. And so I guess to your point, like, I'm every day approaching, keep learning, keep studying, analyzing, breaking down, use video. And it challenges me when I have that mindset, to make sure that I'm on top of the game for the players to benefit from.
Jessica, I watched a podcast interview where you talked about dreaming as a little girl. You know, grew up with three siblings playing on the pond. You had a hockey stick in your hand, probably about the same time you learned to walk, you learned to skate. And you said you grew up dreaming of playing for the Montreal Canadiens. Well, sadly, that's not going to happen. You're not going to play in the National Hockey League, but there's no reason not to realistically expect that you can coach in the National Hockey League. I mean, you are coaching NHL players, so why can't you be on an NHL bench?
Yeah. And I thank you for saying that. Cause I mean, for me, one thing I've never seen is barriers. And I think I had a coach, and I'll tell this story because it's important. I had a coach at a very young age. His name's Leo Parker, and he was an old school traditional awesome coach, but he yelled, and he was a hard ass. And I was one of the boys. I was the only girl with the boys playing double A level, and he taught me a lesson early on. And I was late for a practice because I had a volleyball practice or something, and we had a team rule, no one was late, and so I stepped on the ice, and we had to tell him, of course, if we were going to be late, but that was a rule. And I remember stepping on the ice, and 2 minutes late for practice, he skated all of us. And as a 10-year-old kid, I'm like, maybe in the moment thought I had exception to the rule, the one with the ponytail, but I didn't. And I think in that moment, I remember going home and talking to my dad after, and he's like, you're equal out there. You're expected to, to see yourself as that and to be treated as so. And he's going to treat you so. And I still to this day thank Leo and talk with him about, you taught me as a young girl that regardless of anything, whatever I want it to be, believe in it, strive for it. You can do it just as much as anybody. But I think I had this naive belief that there was no barriers and all the walls around were potentially invisible, or the ceilings, because I don't see that. I just see goals in front of me that I'm working towards every day, to be a better coach, to continue, like I said, to learn and evolve and be better. But I guess that, last week it was pretty special because I was riding up in the elevator with Travis Sanheim, and we grew up learning to skate on the same frozen rink in Elkhorn, Manitoba. At 8 p.m. our parents would drop us off, and there was 5 kids, and we had a good laugh because I haven't seen Travis in a few years, but it was pretty special because I remember in that moment, like, we were two young kids, loved the game, skated together, we had the same coach, but just based on reality, had very different paths in the game. But looking back in that moment, it's like we both had big dreams. We both wanted to be the best at what we could be, and here we are in our own pathways, and it became apparent to me that this is the path I want, and I want to be at the pro level and continue to keep aspiring for that. But I don't see that the barriers that are there. I just want to, continue to follow the path that's right for me.
Do you feel eyes on you because you're doing what you're doing? Do you feel a little added pressure to, I mean, you're a coach, you're one of several coaches with Germany, but is there an extra, I won't call it a weight, but just a set of eyes, I guess,
Yeah,
that you feel?
I think absolutely. I think that no matter what you're doing, anything special you're gonna feel pressure and weight, right? Like that's what makes any good opportunity meaningful is if there's pressure, if there's weight, and
Mm.
that comes from different layers and different perspectives and people. But I definitely know that like this is a huge platform for others beyond me, but more so knowing that there's an opportunity to have success and for that success to be transpiring into something more. So obviously I treat myself and I expect and the players, and I wouldn't be here and Tony wouldn't have me here if he didn't see me as equal to and or above others or other candidates to be in this position, or he wouldn't put me in a position that I wasn't capable of. And so the level of respect that the players give me, the attention that they listen to the details, and they maybe perhaps it's a different voice and perspective, and I think that comes with different expectations on me because it hasn't been done before. So everything I say or do is maybe like, well, this is different, right? So there's maybe
Mm.
just a totally different mindset and approach to what I say. So I feel like every day I have to prove myself, but that's also proving yourself is also privilege, right? Like I'm really grateful to be here, and I feel like it's not a right to be here.
Mm.
It's a privilege, and I have to show that every single day that I'm privileged to be here and I'm deserving to be here. But that's just being prepared and knowing what I'm talking about and being confident in what I say and tell these players, because ultimately then the rest is fine. But it has to be done once, right?
Now, are you like every other coach yet that wins are relief and losses are torture?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's especially in these events because there's no you almost have to forget about it, but you're just constantly you're just going with the next game, and you're kind of carrying those. You have to check those emotions, but you're going right into the next one. So yeah, I
Nobody's
mean,
ever happy. Nobody's
No,
like,
never.
after a win, you talk to a coach and they're like, "Gee, you won 4-1." He's like, "Yeah, did you see the power play?" Oh my, like there's always
yeah,
something, right?
yeah.
And do you feel that?
Oh, absolutely. Like, you know that if there's any deficiency in any breakdown, you're like, oh, it didn't cost us now, but like, and
Right.
you
That's
don't
why
have time to go back
playing's
and work
better.
on it.
That's why playing's better. You can just be in your own little thing and
100%. And when the players check out, that's when we have to check in and solve all the problems to prepare for the next one. So it's fun, but at the same time, there's long hours of living with that. All right, feels good to win, but we can't get complacent. Go back to the drawing board for the next opponent.
so you were in Nuremberg this past year. There are breaks during the season. Are you a traveler? Did you get to take advantage of being over there?
Yeah, I actually only spent the later half or the little bit of the second half of the year out there. So I didn't spend too much
Also, the
traveling.
breaks were done, right?
Yeah, it was done, and I went out there at the end, towards the end of the season. So it was more prepping into playoffs. So I was, working long hours, but it didn't feel like work because I think for me it was my first real taste of being in the pro game, and it was exciting to show up at the rink at 7 a.m. and leave at 7 p.m. to prepare for the next day. But it was definitely an experience that I'm always going to look back on as the green light, is what I call it, to where I am now, because of the way the players and the staff and the GM and everyone in the organization just welcomed me and put me in a really key position right away to coach.
What's the biggest challenge coaching at this level, Jess?
I think just obviously at the highest level, you have to have, you know, all your T's crossed, your I's dotted. Every
Yeah.
single situation has to be covered, because that's being at the pro level. Is those are the breakdowns that cost you games, wins or losses, or in whatever team makes the least amount of errors. So I think you're constantly thinking every situation from every perspective, and that's probably the most challenging, but also fun, because that's what, working with really good coaches and the support staff that we have here, you build off each other, so you don't have to cover it all yourself. But there is that level of like, all right, what if in this situation? What in this situation against this opponent? That drawing board, like this isn't going to work. So special teams as well. Like, we're working together on our special teams, and it's constantly challenging, what have we forgotten about, because that might cost us.
Mm.
What have you liked best about your team? You're into the one and dones now. What's been the best part of the tournament, and your challenges against Czechia next? And
Yeah,
what is that like for you?
we have a very, very, I think, dynamic group of a talented team, but also a depth team with even some young talent here, some really strong DL players that are rookies that are embracing roles, and it's just really fun to see the veteran group, and guys like Sider and experienced players, and Mo Mueller, who's been on the national team as a captain, the leadership, like watching that all come together and seeing the team. I think we haven't even played our best hockey yet. To be honest, we've been really good in moments in all situations, but the test of these competitions is who can really pull it together when it counts and rise up to each opponent, right, and be in that moment and stay present on that opponent. So that's what we're doing. But I think every day there's been moments where it's just, this is awesome. I obviously love sticking on the ice for extra 20 minutes and working with players one-on-one or small groups, because that's my pocket of space that I love to do. And so it's been really fun for me when the players grab me and say, hey, let's work on some deception tools, or I want to beat my first check, and I'm working on edge work, and that's my space where I'm most empowered, and they feel that energy for me. So any days where we have our pregame skates or off days, I love those days as well, because it's where I get to really go to work as well.
Have you last one for me is have you caught yourself standing behind the bench and saying, "Man, that is a player, whoever it is," and always so good, like someone that you've seen live for the first time? I remember the first time I went to the Worlds, I was 20 years old and saw some players I just read about, and I was like, I can't believe that's him.
Yeah.
Like have you, like, is it a guy like David Krejci or that you'll
Yeah.
see up close here tomorrow? But is there somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first practice with Stutzle, when he stepped on the ice and he was zipping up the ice, I was like, you can, like, he's so light. And I tend towards skaters just because I love strong skaters. But um, Sider on our team for sure. He
Oh,
definitely, some days I'm like, he plays such a full game and not afraid to destroy people. But yet it's just his passion. But I think across all of our opponents, it's just been, I've been so like focused on our game plan that I always tell myself, like, you can never be a fan of your players. If you're going to help your players to continue to be better, you're
right.
like watching them. But I think there's that level of, guys like Matt Barzell, and I've been on the ice with him in a skill session, but then you watch him just take over and dominate a game, and you're like, okay, that's what makes these players the best players. But for sure, some of the Europeans that never get to see often, and tomorrow's
Yeah.
going to be a really good example of that, because obviously we're breaking down games and preparing for some really key players to shut them down. So it's a lot of fun, definitely, when you're in it and you're watching them from afar, and then you go right into breaking these players down.
It sounds just like you're in a real good place. And I wonder, as we let you go here, you've won championships, 2010 gold medal, Ivy League titles at Cornell, ECAC championships in college hockey. The list goes on and on and on. All great life experiences. So where you're at right now, how does it compare? Is it just too difficult?
I honestly, I don't even think it's really hit me. I did have kind of a pinch me moment before we got here, where it was just, we were flying. I was still in Germany, but it just dawned on me that, I've been working really, really hard in the last 3 years to be the best skills coach that I could be. And in the off season, I worked with some really great players, and they put their trust in me. Players that aren't playing anymore, but guys like Brent Seabrook that have this character and ability and leadership and years in the game that you just have so much respect for. And and talking with those guys, and they've always said you're gonna get there. Like, keep doing what you're doing. They've been my biggest supporters, and I kind of always had the like, when, how, when, I don't see the barriers, but I think it almost just hit me all at once of like, how did I end up here like this? And I knew it was going to take, a conversation or two with the right person that saw something different in me and what I could bring to a team that would create or, potentially bring this opportunity to life. But I didn't know when it was going to happen. So I think now that I'm here, perhaps when it's all over, it's going to be like an adrenaline crash, as you guys know. But I'm so in the moment and appreciating and so grateful to be here, but yet knowing I have a job to do. And that's been my focus every single day, is do my job and make sure I do it the best that I can. And if we succeed, which my hope is we will succeed, then it's all going to make it that much more sweet.
No question. Well, for the moment, you're where you belong, and the sky is obviously the limit for Jessica Campbell. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, guys.
Good luck, Jessica.
Thank you.
Ray, Jessica Campbell is too busy for this. So in her honor, we're going to have to raise a glass of 44-year-old CC to Jess Campbell for joining us today, presented by our friends at Canadian Club Whiskey. The 44-year-old release is available everywhere. Maybe when she gets back to North America after a successful men's worlds, or if in the future we cross paths, who knows? Maybe she'll come out to Saskatchewan and I'll give her a splash.
Well, she's got to go home eventually, right?
Yeah. Well,
she's an impressive young coach.
Really isn't she?
She is. I like how you can tell she wants to get right into the meat of the problem and solve it with her skill background, her skating background. I was really, really quite impressed.
We're surrounded by so many terrific hockey people. And I'm going to say hockey women, but I chose people for a purpose, right? You're married to one, obviously. He's doing great things in the hockey operations department. Emily Castonguay is there. She's making her way. Rachel Dory is in Vancouver. I'm thinking of Cassie Campbell Pascal. I'm thinking of Cheryl Pounder, who I work with, you work with. I mean,
Megan Duggan is in New Jersey.
Go down the list, right?
Yeah, and this is the thing. Pretty soon, Dregs, not pretty soon already, and going to be more. You can't list. There's too many, and it's just the way it should be. If a woman is qualified for a job, why can't she aspire to have it?
Yeah.
Why can't she coach? Why can't Jessica Campbell, in whatever I never know how the coaching road works. Why can't she be qualified?
Of course.
If she is, she is.
Yeah.
The one phrase I use all the time, and I think it's apt, is that it's not a bench press contest. You're just trying to find the people that can think the game, teach the game, help their teams advance and develop and grow. Like, that's what a coach is.
Yeah.
It's not somebody that can lift 400 pounds. Who cares?
No. And she's clearly,
I was really impressed.
And look, she's not a power skating instructor. I mean, that's part of it. She can teach that. She's very good at it. She maybe cut her teeth in coaching and that being a part of it. But now the skill aspect of what Jess Campbell brings to coaching is rounding out her arsenal. So, I mean, whether it's Jess Campbell or one of the women that we've mentioned here, I mean, it's inevitable that we will see a woman coaching in the National Hockey League. So here's to sooner rather than later. And we're joined now by Chris Abbott from Coolbet.co on episode 35 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. And, as we were talking offline, Chris, it feels to you like it's a slower time of the betting season, perhaps, but that's that's not to say that there isn't a whole lot of activity going on, because you can look for stuff and you can find it. And as we're recording, we're waiting for St. Louis to play Colorado as that series in the West unfolds. And there is some creative ways to put some money down on Nazem Kadri and David Perron.
Yeah, there sure is. And I guess it only feels slow because we're coming out of the blender that is the first round of the NHL playoffs. So it feels like it's slowing down a bit, and NBA is kind of slowed down a bit as well, just because there's fewer teams. But certainly nothing slow about these games when they're on, especially some of the animosity that's been brewing, and frankly, of course, has gone over the top in this Colorado series. So there's some penalty minute props that I think are. You never want to say it's free money, but Nazem Kadri to get a penalty minute in game, what are we at, 5 here tonight, is even money. So that's, if he gets pulled into a scrum after a whistle, offsetting minors, that cashes. If he trips someone coming through the neutral zone, if he gets a high hit in on the forecheck, anything at all, just any old penalty is even money. And then David Perron at plus 240. I mean, I envision these guys get their mouths going at some point during the game. Maybe Colorado builds up a big lead, a couple of headlocks. That's it. You and you, none of this stuff. Boom. And we're all up 3.5 units just like that.
Man, you must watch a game differently than I do.
That's all I care about, Ray. It's all I care about. I'm still wishing I took your advice. I mean, that whole Carolina series has gone under the total now. And last time that we spoke, I was saying, we haven't seen these 5s and 5.5s. Well, we're looking at it in the face with that series, and it still goes under.
Oh, that was an easy one. Just once listen. Abbott, just once, man.
I listened for the rest of the series. How's that?
Hey, question. In the playoffs, now, Tampa's halfway through. Are there Conn Smythe odds starting to pop up?
Well, they have been up earlier. There are none up right now, but I think it's just a function of the day, or maybe waiting for the rest of the series to finish. Because even though I remember after game 1, somebody had asked me that in the Calgary series, and I said, hey, great time to jump on Jacob Markstrom and Johnny Gaudreau.
Whoops.
And you'll probably get even better number on those guys now. But I mean, it was, maybe the betting market still knew all the better. But there were still at that time, a lot of Colorado guys near the top of the list, a lot of Florida guys near the top of the list. So, if people got in on Vasilevsky, even though he was pedestrian in the first round, if people got in on, Nikita Kucherov or even Corey Perry, I mean, God, what his odds would have been. Is he Evander Kane looking like a really good prospect for that right now? But I mean, if the Oilers get there, we know who it's going to be. So, there's none up as we speak, but they have been up throughout the playoffs, and they will change significantly from what they were. So I presume that there's some people sitting on some really good long shot tickets, as we've got 2 teams, Tampa through and Edmonton seem to be poised to go through, that a lot of, the betting markets had those teams being out by now.
Was there money to be made on Tampa Bay sweeping Florida?
Oh, yeah, goodness. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it would have been, 10, 15, 20 to 1. They were an underdog in the series, plus 135. I got that, but for them to sweep as an underdog, that. And you know what? I bet there's people who made the bet because the way they looked in the first series and the way that they've looked in the last 2 playoffs, there's no reason to believe. There was also no reason to believe that Florida would only score a couple of goals in the whole series. But hey, they're that's why they play the game, right?
What about Sweden, Canada? We've got the men's worlds that is getting into the serious side of things now. Canada has truthfully struggled a bit, right? I mean, we'll see how things move in this medal round, but Sweden is always a favored team at the men's worlds. Is there any reason to look at that game differently other than having the Swedes as the favored?
Sweden's a favorite, but just by a little bit. I was kind of surprised when I saw that game goes at 9:20 Eastern tomorrow morning. I guess I'll specify that being Thursday morning. And I love nothing more than rolling out of bed and placing a bet. So I've already got that done. But Sweden played in a tougher division. They beat the host in a shootout game. They played a tight game with the U.S. And when you look at their statistics, they had a better power play than Canada. They had a better penalty kill than Canada. They took fewer penalties than Canada. They had better goaltending numbers than Canada. And one thing that you guys know from being at the event is that, it's in Finland, but the Swedes are going to be there en masse now that the playoffs are starting. And guys, this is a young Canadian team. A lot of them played like World Juniors before, but a lot of their top players are young guys, and this is a men's tournament, and as you know, there's a big difference there. So I think Canada will be certainly up against it. So I'm betting on Sweden in this one. I think they're minus 111. So it's just better than a pick'em for Sweden, or just worse depending on how you look at it. Hey, and if Canada wins, then I can wear the flag one more day. But I think it's a good way to approach that game.
You have a quick thought on Champions League final on the weekend, Real Madrid and Liverpool?
Only that, again, it's another chance to bet early in the day. I raise the soccer
Liverpool
guy around here. I mean, it seems like Liverpool's been there.
Liverpool's
been there for a week of Sundays now. Yeah. So if you say there's no question that they're going to win, Ray, I think they're plus 112. So maybe I'll just have to go take some more Ray Ferraro advice at the sportsbook.
Well, I took it from my 12-year-old son. He's a Liverpool fan. He's the guy he's my information. Reese is the guy. He's got Liverpool. So that's my group.
Hey, I met Reese. I trust him. I don't know if it's ethical to give betting picks from the 12-year-old, but that's a question for somebody else.
All right, Kris, thanks for joining us.
All right, guys, thanks so much.
Time for Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. Ray, fire your questions to us on Twitter and Instagram at Ray and Dregs. Ask Ray and Dregs Anything is brought to you by Duer, the world's most comfortable pants and shorts. And I can attest to this. I just got the package from our friends at Duer recently. I got shorts, I got t-shirts, I got a couple of terrific golf shirts. And I remember, was it season 1, maybe season 2, you talking about the Duer pants, the jeans, and saying, Dregs,
unreal,
you got to try these pants because they are off the charts. Yeah. And they are, but, I'm just going to describe myself. I might be on the side of chunky. I'm working on it.
Stocky.
That was the word. I almost, in my head, I thought portly, and I'm like, I can't call myself portly. Stocky is exactly right.
Yes.
So those shorts and jeans, pants, and the stretchiness that goes along with the look, wait till you get home. Do you imagine that the package that the good people at Duer have put together for you is going to still be there untapped? Or do you think Landon and Matt have already dove into that?
If somebody's dove into it, it's Landon. Matt will walk by that package 500 times. Landon will get his grubby hands into that, and he'll be looking around and he'll go, Dad has no idea if there's 3 pairs or 4 or 1 in here. Yeah. So I'll take the one that I like and it'll just be gone.
So I'm telling you right now, I think there's a pair of pants, a pair of shorts, 2 golf shirts, 2 t-shirts.
I'm going to have to audit the package when I get back. I'm looking forward to whenever I do get back.
So use code RD, or sorry, I'm going to do it again. Use code RND15 and you will save 15% off everything at Duer.ca. All right. Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. Instagram, Jared Clausen. Ray, who would you rather have? Mark Scheifele or Pierre-Luc Dubois?
I think Scheifele has a higher offensive upside. I would like, if I had to choose, I would pick a motivated, content Mark Scheifele.
Right.
That's my pick.
Okay. I mean, fair enough. And I understand why Jared is asking, and it has to do with, the speculation around Scheifele, his comments, after the exit meetings with the Winnipeg Jets, etc. So, Josh Joseph from Instagram. Can you guys bring back Throat Punch? It was funny, it was enjoyable, and I really miss it as part of the podcast. The problem, I'll just jump first here, is it was hard, right? Because there had to be just an obvious Throat Punch candidate, but not societal, right? Because it's too easy then, right? You're looking at the obvious, you're looking at the headlines. Current events is pretty clear, right? So when you're diving into the National Hockey League, I don't know, like, is it one day Milan Lucic because he almost ran over Mike Smith? It got too difficult to manage. That's my perspective. So maybe we bring it back on occasion. How's that?
See, I think if we have a little focus that we might want one, we can find a candidate. But it's not going to be every week.
No.
Although, look, I'm traveling around lots. I wouldn't say this was a throat punch per se, but we're going through security in Newark today.
Okay.
And there's 2 lines and one of the scanners is broken, and the TSA pre-line, which we're in, is now getting funneled into the main line, and it's one of those snake lines. It's not going very smooth.
Okay.
So this woman in front of me she's frustrated and sour, and she's for some reason decided to tell me her grievances.
Oh, good.
I'm just in line. I'm the next guy there. I'm waiting in line too. So this went on for a few minutes, and I said, "Ma'am, you're going to have to take your complaints to a new department. This one's closed." And she looked at me, and then she just turned around and was fuming for the rest of the way. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do about it? I don't know. I don't want to stand in this line, but I got to wait till I get up there. So
the only thing better would have been if I had been there and captured this either on video or picture. Because the look of annoyance on your face, I can clearly visualize, because you've got the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, and the devil is like, just tell her to stop talking. And then you're like, no, I can't do that. I've got to be more polite.
Well, so she's like, can you believe the TSA line got merged in? No, I can't believe it. Well, what else am I going to say? Nobody else asked me. I don't know. I'm just in line.
All right. Chris Archer from Instagram wants to know, geez, we're getting the beauties here in episode 35. Bigger choke job, Team Duthie versus Team Dubois, which the O-Dog would have been part of, or Mito Pereira on the weekend. That's just mean at the PGA Championship.
Well, I'm going to say the Duthie choke job, because what we think we play is nothing like what those guys on TV play. We all have a club and we all have a ball, and that's about it. I felt that poor guy, man.
I know, it was
played
painful.
such a great tournament.
Yeah.
And that's a tough way to throw it up.
All right.
But I'm voting anything with Duthie.
Okay.
I'm voting.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. We'll wrap it up with this. Another kind of cool question. I don't know. We got to test your memory because I'm sure you had favorite restaurants back in your day with the New York Islanders. Okay. So Vin.A wants to know, first of all, he says, love the pod. Favorite place to eat on Long Island?
Oh, man.
Was there one back in the day? I never went past the Marriott at Nassau Coliseum, so I can't tell you.
Yeah, it wasn't there. We used to go to this place. Pat Flatley and Glenn Healy were regulars at. And we would go there. It was a small place. Oh, I can't. It was so good. And you go there, and whatever you wanted, it was kind of in one of those, the champagne metal buckets.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted a couple of beers or a couple of different kinds of something or other, they would put it there. It wasn't on the menu. They just put it there. You'd go in, we'd never get a menu. You'd just ask for it. Wow. Oh, so good. And of course, it's been a long time.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Well, give it some thought, and we'll revisit, because it's a fun question. I mean, this guy's obviously recognizing your time with the Islanders, right?
Okay. Yes. And I will say this. I had the best trip to New York City these last 4 days in all the time I've gone to New York, because I did things that I don't normally do. So Emily Kaplan used to live in New York. She's from New Jersey. She gives me this restaurant on the west side. Dregs,
Yeah.
I don't know where the west side is from. I don't know. Anyway, I get in an Uber. I go there. Amazing. Had a great meal. So then our stats guy, he says, do you like Chinese food? I said, yeah. He goes, I got a place for you. So we go to this place. It's called 17 Wo Hop. That's the address, but that's the name of the place. You go downstairs into this place. I'm cracking up as we're going there. We go downstairs. We get in. The place is so small. The food was unbelievable. But my favorite part, and so it was like, to me, it felt like authentic New York. That you're in their neighborhood or in the neighborhood, and you're like, oh, this is Chinatown, and this, oh, it was so great. Anyway, so he orders a Chinese tea, like a black tea. And I said, hey, do you have any green tea? And the waiter stops. He goes, no, black tea, better than nothing. And then he walks away. So I got a black tea. Like, he just put on,
no soup for you.
I just loved it. It was so good. And so I'm going back to 17 Wo Hop. That was really good.
Salivating listening to you talk about that. That's fantastic. All right. Well, I was going to ask what you got planned for the next few days, but we know what you have planned. And your next game is New York and the Carolina Hurricanes. But what you don't know is when you're going home next, right? Because it'll depend on the series and when you start up the conference finals.
So game 5 is Thursday, Rangers at Carolina. Game 6 is Carolina Rangers on Saturday back at MSG. If that's the end of the series, technically I could go home unless the heavens conspire and the league starts the next round on Monday or Tuesday, or I don't know. Yeah. So I'm hoping to get home. I want to get into that Doer package and see what I got there.
Little golf, little R&R, introduce yourself
see the family
to your wife.
too.
Yeah,
exactly. See the family.
All right, buddy. Well, always a pleasure you taking the time to do this, because you can be doing a lot of things like napping, as example.
Oh, that's next.
Okay, perfect. All right, look at that. It's very clean in that room. It's very well. You've only been there a couple of hours, right?
Yeah, the other bed's
covered.
It's got some shrapnel on it.
All right, man. Okay, have a good game, and we'll be in touch very soon on the weekend, and we'll line up. Look forward to the conference final in episode 36.
Yeah, thanks, Dregs, and thanks to Jessica Campbell. Thanks to everybody that listened, and look after yourselves, everyone, and we'll talk next week.
Huge shout out to our partners who make the pod possible, by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, who ask, are you over beer? Coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website. By Boston Pizza, pick it up, get it delivered. Just let Boston Pizza do the cooking tonight. And as Ray mentioned, by Doer. Use code RND15 and you will save 15% off everything at doer.ca. Thanks for listening, watching, everybody. This is episode 35 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. Episode 36, obviously focusing on the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Be well, everyone.